Hello, and welcome to GlobalData Themes Instant Insights. At GlobalData, we define a theme as something that keeps a CEO awake at night, as businesses that invest in important themes will succeed, and those that don't will fail. Hello, and welcome back to Instant Insights. Today we have our final episode of our 2023 prediction series, and I'm joined by Rob Stoneman from the GlobalData Public Sector team to tell us about some of his thoughts about the year ahead. Hi Rob, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yes, good, thanks. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Oh, no, pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Yeah, very busy time in public sector, which is weird to say at Christmas because normally things get quite quietened down. But I think after what's been quite a turbulent year, it's
Of
that
course.
theme's definitely continued through towards Christmas as well. So yeah, lots going on.
Yeah, I bet. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to us. So you just had your webinar recently on what to expect in public sector tech in 2023. What would you say was one of your top predictions?
Well, I mean, I suppose on a very top level, and this impacts everything across the coverage area for us, which is UK public sector technology. It's looking like it's definitely going to be quite a bleak economic outlook, which is unsurprising considering the turbulence that we've seen in the previous year. I mean, we've had enough changes in terms of senior leadership within the government. Obviously, the Prime Minister and Chancellor, the most positions that have changed. We don't see that kind of turbulence over an entire parliamentary term. So to get
No.
that in the space of a few months.
Yeah, the shortest serving prime minister ever.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, definitely something to remember in decades to come. I suspect that record will probably hold for quite some time. For me, I think the real impact of that is it's going to mean at the moment that the big focus for the government is on sound economic policy,
Mm.
and Jeremy Hunt has kind of made that the key theme of the autumn statement, which was obviously there to try and right the ship of the disastrous mini budget from September. And that is going to mean that for many public sector organisations, the coming year is going to be quite tricky from an economic standpoint. There are some winners and there are some losers. Some areas have done better than others, and that will obviously feed through into the amount of money that there is available for the technology purchasing across the sector as well.
Yeah, could you name a couple of those winners?
Yeah, sure. So I'd say the biggest areas that have benefited so far is health and social care and
Mm.
education. So there's been more money for both those sectors. There's been a bit of extra money for DWP as well around tax and fraud and combating that. So again, if you're looking at those areas, they're the places where, as we have seen, for several years now, have been relatively protected. In terms of the losers, I'd say pretty much everything else across UK public sector. Although what I would suggest is that this is quite a fast moving environment. So one of the things that on our webinar we'd called out was the fact that local government next year is facing some really challenging times. But just in the last couple of days, we've had the new local government provisional funding settlement come out, and that actually looks far better than we had anticipated from the autumn statement. So there's
Oh,
actually
really?
some real terms increases there for council budgets in terms of
Yeah.
the sort of the core grant funding they get from the government, and that wasn't anticipated. So it just goes to show that this is a really fast moving environment, and I guess that would be kind of the second point is that things are changing quickly.
Yeah.
And policy is changing quickly, and I think one of the real challenges we had last year, and I think what we will see going through to the next election, is that there is a lot of potential change for policy quite quickly that we haven't necessarily experienced in the past. It tends to be quite a slow, gradual process, but at the moment, things are changing quite rapidly.
Yeah, it's just so turbulent. Um, how much do you think things will change in 2023?
Well, I think from our perspective, one of the things that we often get asked is kind of, well, what does all this mean ultimately for tech spending? And I think on a more positive note, and this is one of the things we really wanted to highlight, is that technology investment is still going to be a real priority right across the public sector. regardless of the underlying fiscal difficulties. I mean, obviously that will impact it, how much is
Mm.
available, but fundamentally technology is and has been for several years now seen as a way that public sector organizations can not only save money but can also improve the services that they offer citizens effectively. So, if I think about local government as a good example, um, I would suspect that we will see local government spending on technology maintain at a fairly robust level. I don't think we'll see huge increases in terms of sort of, well above the kind of rate that we would expect when inflation is taken into account. But I do suspect that it will hold at a fairly level peg, as it has done for several years now. And
Mm.
again, that it signals that councils and public sector organisations in general do understand that ultimately, investment in technology, especially with the experience of the COVID-19 pandemic, showing this so vividly, that it'd be foolish to make cuts in those areas.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean there aren't necessarily going to be some areas that win out compared to others, but there will be hard choices that need to be made. I think we can be, fairly certain that at least for our clients, for technology vendors in this area, there was going to still be a good amount of business coming down the line, and I think a decent growth, even if it's not necessarily the kind of growth we'd like to see if we'd had an economic situation which was a little bit more rosy. Let's just say that.
And where do you think we'll see the spending? If you're looking at the technology stack, can you see like a key area where it's going to be focused towards?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question because again, it cuts across. It's not necessarily going to be the same for every single vertical. I
Mm.
think that the key takeaway here is that if it's anything that can help save money,
Yeah.
then that is going to be an area that's going to continue to be a real priority. And that's it sounds like a really basic point, but ultimately, it's spending money on digital transformation is ultimately an enabler of being able to save money overall in terms of the whatever public services it is that you're delivering. So again, if I think about local government as an example, you've got councils that are responsible for a wide variety of different services to citizens, everything from social care all the way down to local environment, waste and disposal, planning, that kind of thing. And so, but you've got a lot of different services, a lot of different suppliers, a lot of different contractual arrangements. And so if you can kind of rationalize that all down, place a lot of the legacy issues and the legacy systems that councils have, then spending a bit of money on improving your technology can actually save you a lot of money in the long run.
Mm. Yeah. You got to spend money to save money. Um, what's your final prediction for next year?
I don't know if I'd say this is so much of a prediction as I think something that we think is increasingly important within
Mm.
our team. I think what anyone who's looking at kind of future policy on the medium term, so not necessarily what's coming down next year, but what is going to be important building into the years after that, is the fact that we could potentially have a change of government in 18 months to 2 years' time. So that's an area we're focusing on. I think any business needs to start thinking about that sort of beyond next year, because there could be some real changes in terms of broader fiscal policy. There could be some real changes in regards to things like levelling up and devolution. And
Yeah.
we're already hearing that Labour are still very much focused on that and want to sort of take that and run with it. So again, it's kind of teasing out what the specifics of their policy would be if they were to win at the next general election. So yeah, I think that's probably for me one of the most important ones, because it often
Mm.
gets kind of sort of forgotten about thinking just about next year, when actually
Yeah.
2024 onwards there could be a change in government for the first time in nearly 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. We need to make sure that we don't get sort of tunnel vision and make sure that we keep looking next year and beyond. Well, thank you so much, Rob, for those great insights into next year. Thanks for listening, and from us in Thematic Intelligence, see you next time.